Have you ever noticed that the moment you stop letting someone pull your strings, they suddenly change their game when a manipulator realizes you won't bend to their will anymore? They don't simply walk away defeated, they evolve. And their next move, it's often dirtier and more dangerous than anything they tried before. Picture a spider quietly spinning its web in the corner, completely ignored by the fly that thinks it's safe. Or imagine a hunter crouched silently in the shadows, waiting patiently for the deer to drop its guard. Just like that, manipulators wait. They smile. They act calm and collected. But beneath that fake warmth, they're already scheming their next trap. Because when they lose the power to control you directly, they shift to controlling the story around you. Once they can't manipulate you, you're faced with a critical choice: fall for their new tricks or rise above them. And when you choose to rise, that's when their panic begins. The moment you stop craving their approval, they're left scrambling. Your strength becomes a mirror, exposing everything they tried so desperately to hide. Isn't it ironic? The very freedom they feared in you becomes the weapon that unravels their carefully built illusions. So, how do you recognize when someone's manipulation transforms into something darker? And more importantly, how do you stop it from dragging you back into their toxic game? Stay with me, because what you're about to discover might forever change how you respond to manipulative people. Let's dive right in. Number 1. They try to shame you publicly. One of the most calculated, toxic tactics manipulators use is public shaming. When their private manipulation, guilt trips, gaslighting, silent treatment stops working, they take it to the next level. They move their performance from the private stage to the public arena, hoping the fear of judgment, ridicule, or humiliation will finally break you down. Here's the raw truth. When they fail to control you in private, they try to control you through the fear of public opinion, unable to sway you behind closed doors. They attack your confidence in front of others. They'll mock you during meetings, crack jokes at your expense, question your intelligence or loyalty subtly, but loudly enough for others to hear. And when you finally confront them, they'll smirk and say, "Relax, I was only joking." Or, "You're overthinking it." But you're not. You feel that sting deep in your gut. You sense the shift. You know exactly what's happening. They're trying to shrink you in the eyes of everyone else because they failed to shrink you in your own. This is exactly where Stoic wisdom shines. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know the truth." And Carl Jung added, "Shame is a soul-eating emotion. Together, these truths become a shield." The moment you give more weight to someone else's opinion than to your own inner truth, you hand them the keys to your peace of mind. Shame only has power if you allow it to take root. But the truth stands unbreakable, untouched by whispers or roaring crowds. Let me share a quick story. A woman I know, let's call her Claire, worked under a manager who was a master manipulator. He tried every subtle mind game imaginable, but one-on-one, he couldn't shake her. She was too centered, too self-aware, too grounded. So he escalated, moving from private manipulation to public humiliation. After Claire stood her ground against public shaming, it became clear how powerful quiet confidence can be. Now, let's uncover the next dirty tactic manipulators love to use when they realize they can't control you anymore. Claire's story is the perfect example of strength in the face of public humiliation. During meetings, her manager would cut her off mid-sentence, roll his eyes when she offered ideas, and once even joked, "We should give Claire a trophy for working late twice this month." Everyone laughed, but she felt the sting deeply. Yet, instead of shrinking or lashing out, she paused. She let the uncomfortable silence speak. Then, with calm conviction, she said, "Working late isn't a badge of honor. It's a system failure." The entire room went silent. She didn't humiliate him back. She stood her ground with grace. That was the moment everyone in that room finally saw him for who he really was. So, how do you deal with someone who tries to shame you publicly? First, don't let their words shake your sense of self-worth. Second, resist the urge to retaliate. Stand your ground with calm clarity. And third, trust that the truth will always reveal itself, even if not immediately. At the end of the day, you don't need to match their cruelty with louder noise. Let your quiet strength do the talking, because when shame doesn't stick, they lose all their power. Number 2, they play the victim. One of the dirtiest, most manipulative tricks people use when they realize they can no longer control you is playing the victim. This happens the moment you stop folding to their guilt trips, start enforcing your boundaries, and choose your own peace over their approval. Suddenly, you're no longer the kind, understanding one. Now, in their twisted story, you become the problem, the cold one, the villain, and them, they magically transform into the innocent, misunderstood, mistreated victim. Here's the raw truth. When they can't control you directly, they flip the narrative and paint you as the aggressor. This is never about truth. It's always about control. Once they lose their hold over you, they try to manipulate how others see you. They act hurt, exaggerate the story, and twist your firmness into cruelty, your boundaries into betrayal. Their ultimate goal, to discredit your strength and destroy your credibility. If they can't manipulate you anymore, they'll manipulate everyone else's perception of you. This is where Stoic wisdom cuts through the noise. Epictetus once said, "He who blames others has a long way to go on his journey." And it's true. When someone can no longer manipulate you, they start trying to manipulate the narrative around you. The Stoic path isn't about controlling other people's opinions. It's about mastering your response when someone plays the victim to make you look like the bad guy. Remember, the truth doesn't need to scream. It just needs to stand still. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Lauren, was in a long-term relationship where she always gave more than she received. When she finally started standing up for herself, saying no, setting limits, and choosing her own peace, her partner didn't take it well. He didn't argue or confront her directly. Instead, he went behind her back, telling mutual friends, "I don't know what happened to Lauren. She's become so cold, so distant." He painted her strength as selfishness and played the victim flawlessly. But Lauren didn't run after people to defend her character. She didn't explain herself in rooms she wasn't even in. She focused on her healing, her growth, and her truth. And in time, the people who truly mattered saw through his lies, without her saying a single word. So, how do you respond when someone weaponizes victimhood against you? First, stay calm. Don't feed the drama. Second, stand firm in your truth. You don't owe everyone an explanation, and you definitely don't owe them your side of the story. Your consistent actions will always speak louder than any desperate words. Third, never shrink yourself just because someone else feels threatened or uncomfortable by your strength. Their version of the story might be louder, but yours is real. At the end of the day, when someone has to pretend to be the victim just to paint you as the enemy, it means you've already reclaimed your power. Keep it. Walk forward confidently and watch their fiction collapse under the unstoppable weight of your truth. Number 3. They start spreading subtle lies. This is one of the most cowardly and sneaky tactics manipulators use when they've lost all direct control over you. They don't always craft obvious lies. Instead, they carefully design subtle distortions. They twist your words, imply things you never said, and sprinkle vague, suggestive comments to make others start second-guessing you. They won't boldly say, "You're a bad person." Instead, they whisper, "I don't know. Something feels off about them lately." They won't openly accuse you. They'll plant small seeds of doubt and wait for others to water them for them. They thrive on ambiguity, on leaving just enough room for speculation so that people start building false narratives on their behalf. Here's the harsh truth. Once they can no longer control how you see yourself, they shift to controlling how others see you. It's no longer about manipulation. It becomes sabotage. They want to isolate you. They want people to question your integrity, your intentions, and your character. And they know they don't need solid proof to succeed. All it takes is a few well-placed whispers, enough moments of silence, and some raised eyebrows in the right rooms. This is where Stoic clarity becomes your armor. Seneca said, "The truth is simple, lies require complication." Mark Twain added, "A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is putting on its shoes." That's exactly how this tactic works, by exploiting how fast gossip moves, and how slow truth often feels in comparison. But a true Stoic doesn't panic. They don't chase every rumor or try to fight every lie. They understand that while truth might be slow, it stands firm. And it's the only thing that never crumbles. Under pressure, let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Eric, worked at a company where he refused to help a colleague cut corners on an important project. The colleague didn't like being held accountable. Over the next few weeks, subtle comments started circulating. "Eric's been so territorial lately," or "I heard he's really difficult to work with." No one ever said these things to Eric directly, but the rumors snaked into meetings and conversations where he wasn't present. Eric didn't panic. He didn't storm around demanding explanations or try to clear his name desperately. Instead, he stayed steady, focused on delivering excellent work, and kept his boundaries firm. Slowly but surely, his actions began to speak for themselves. Over time, the lies lost their power, because the people who truly mattered saw the truth clearly without needing to be convinced. So, how do you respond when someone starts distorting reality around you? First, don't chase every lie. That's exactly what they want you to do. Second, let your actions speak louder than any rumor. Truth doesn't need backup dancers. Third, trust that time will always reveal what manipulation tries to hide. At the end of the day, if someone has to twist your story to feel powerful, they already know the truth is on your side. Let them complicate things while you continue living simply, honestly, and powerfully. Remember, the truth doesn't need to be loud. It only needs to stand strong. Sometimes, truth doesn't need to be the loudest voice in the room, it just has to last. Number 4. They isolate you from others. Here's one of the most calculated moves a manipulator makes when they feel their grip slipping. They begin isolating you, but not physically. No, that would be too obvious. Instead, they work behind the scenes, socially and psychologically. They plant tiny seeds of doubt in the minds of those closest to you, your friends, your co-workers, your family. It starts quietly. A whisper here, a loaded comment there, subtle enough that no one even notices at first. But slowly, the energy shifts. People pull back, unsure why they feel different around you. And you start feeling a strange distance, a coldness in the air, like you're being pushed out of your own circle. Here's the brutal truth. Their goal isn't clarity, it's control. By turning others against you, they hope to make you feel alone and cornered. Because once you feel isolated, you become easier to manipulate. With fewer connections and less support, you begin to doubt yourself. You question your judgment, your worth, and why the room feels colder than it used to. It's never been about fairness. It's always been about power. And one of the fastest ways to break someone's resolve is to convince them they have no one left in their corner. This is where Stoic philosophy becomes your shield. Seneca once said, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you." That's your compass, and on the darker side of human nature. Machiavelli exposed the strategy. Control the narrative, and you control the person. That's exactly what manipulators aim to do. By controlling the story being told about you, they hope to gain power over how others see you, and worse, how you begin to see yourself. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Jenna, was part of a close-knit project team. She began asserting herself more, setting healthy boundaries, and challenging unrealistic expectations. One of her teammates, threatened by her growing strength and confidence, started quietly sowing discord. He didn't launch open attacks. Instead, he made offhand remarks like, "Jenna's been a little intense lately, don't you think?" Or, "She's kind of hard to talk to these days." The comments were small, but over time they stacked up. People started pulling away. Meetings felt different. Jenna could feel the chill, the shift in tone, even though no one said anything directly. But she didn't panic. She didn't lash out or confront anyone in frustration. Instead, she anchored herself in integrity. She showed up. She stayed professional. She kept contributing real value. And eventually, the people who mattered began to see the truth. Her teammates' quiet campaign unraveled the moment others compared his whispers to her consistent actions. So how do you respond when someone tries to isolate you? First, be aware. Recognize the tactic before it works. The earlier you see it, the harder it is for them to succeed. Second, double down on your integrity. Your consistency becomes undeniable proof they can't distort. Third, strengthen your ties with the people who reflect your values. You don't need a crowd, just a few real ones who truly know your heart. At the end of the day, isolation is a trap built on illusion. The people meant for you won't be swayed by empty narratives or manipulative whispers. Stay grounded, stay true, and let the truth outlast the noise. Number 5. They use guilt to make you comply. Now let's talk about one of the most emotionally draining tools in the manipulator's arsenal: guilt. They won't debate with logic. They won't confront you with truth. They don't fight you openly. They don't argue with logic or share their feelings honestly. Instead, they slip straight into your heart, targeting your empathy, your conscience, your deepest desire to be good and kind. It sounds like, "After everything I've done for you," or "I guess none of that mattered to you." It's not about love. It's not about fairness. It's emotional blackmail, perfectly designed to make you feel guilty for having boundaries, for expressing your needs, or for simply living your life on your own terms. Here's the truth. They use guilt because it works. They don't need to shout or cause a big scene. All it takes is a disappointed sigh, a sad look, a few loaded words, and suddenly you feel the need to explain, to fix things, to prove your loyalty. They know you care. They know you're thoughtful and compassionate. And instead of respecting that, they exploit it. You end up apologizing for things that shouldn't even require an apology, doing favors you don't want to do, and abandoning your own needs just to avoid making them upset. But if someone truly valued you, they wouldn't weaponize your kindness. They would honor it. This is where Stoic wisdom gives us an unbreakable shield. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And there's another powerful idea. Guilt is a weapon used by those too weak to lead, yet too afraid to be left behind. When guilt is used by manipulators, it's never about healing or connection. It's about control. If they can't guide you with honesty, they'll try to steer you with shame. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Danielle, had a relative who constantly used guilt to keep her in line. When Danielle decided to take a dream job out of state, her aunt didn't say, "Congratulations, I'm so proud of you." Instead, she sighed and said, "I guess family doesn't matter to you anymore." When Danielle couldn't attend every gathering or say yes to every favor, her aunt would throw out comments like, "Wow, after everything I've done for you." And it worked for a long time. Danielle kept stretching herself thin, saying yes when she meant no, exhausting her spirit just to avoid that crushing guilt. Then one day, Danielle paused and asked herself, "Would I ever speak to someone I love the way she speaks to me?" The answer hit her like lightning. From that moment, she stopped responding out of guilt and started acting from self-respect. The shift wasn't loud, but it was life-changing. So, How do you respond when someone uses guilt to control you? First, recognize the script. Understand that it's not love, it's manipulation. Second, pause before you react. Ask yourself, am I doing this because I truly want to, or because I'm afraid not to? Third, set boundaries with clarity and firmness, not cruelty. Remember, you don't owe anyone your peace just because they once did you a favor or offered you kindness. At the end of the day, guilt only has power when you believe you've done something wrong. But having boundaries isn't wrong. It's wise, and the people who truly love you will never make you feel ashamed for protecting your soul. Number 6. They try to destroy your confidence. Now let's talk about one of the cruelest tactics manipulators turn to. When they've lost control, breaking down your confidence. This isn't just about winning a single argument or making you feel bad in a fleeting moment. It's deeper, more insidious. It starts subtly, small jabs, passive-aggressive remarks, questions disguised as concern. But it all leads to the same ultimate goal: to chip away at your self-belief until you no longer trust yourself. Here's the harsh truth. When they can't own you directly, they attack your self-worth so you stop believing you can stand alone. If they can make you doubt your judgment, your strength, your intuition, they win. Without lifting a single finger, they make you start doubting yourself. You stop making bold choices. You hesitate more and more. You start second-guessing every decision, waiting for their approval again. And that's exactly what they want, for you to come crawling back. Not because they earned your trust, but because they systematically destroyed your sense of self. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes your strongest armor. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength and navel." Ravikant echoed this perfectly. The first step in silencing a strong mind is to convince it that it's broken. But here's the truth. You are not broken. You're under psychological attack by someone who fears your strength. Because your power shines a light on everything they lack inside themselves. Let me tell you about a guy I know. We'll call him Chris. He was in a relationship where every time he accomplished something, his partner would subtly undermine him. When he got a promotion, she'd say, "Must be nice when you know the right people." When he made an independent decision, she'd ask, "Are you sure that's the smartest move?" At first, it seemed harmless, just teasing, maybe even concern. But over time, these tiny cuts added up. Chris went from being decisive and confident to hesitant and quiet. His spark faded. One day, a close friend looked him in the eye and said, "You've changed, and not in a good way." That comment hit him like a mirror, forcing him to see himself clearly for the first time in years. Chris realized that he hadn't just changed. He had been molded into someone else, someone smaller, someone quieter. That was the moment he drew the line. He walked away. It wasn't easy. It took time. But with every day that passed, the mental fog began to lift. Slowly, his confidence returned. Not because someone handed it back to him, but because he reclaimed it, piece by piece. By remembering who he was without all the noise and sabotage. So, How did you handle someone who tries to erode your confidence? First, recognize that it's intentional. Their remarks aren't harmless slip-ups. They're calculated strikes. Second, protect your mental space. Write down your wins, your values, your strengths. Remind yourself daily who you are and what you've accomplished. Third, surround yourself with people who speak truth into you, not fear, not doubt. At the end of the day, confidence doesn't come from being perfect or always getting it right. It comes from deeply knowing and accepting who you are, even when others try to make you forget. Don't give them that power. Reclaim your voice. Rebuild your strength. And always remember, no one can destroy what you refuse to surrender. Number 7. They offer fake reconciliation. Now let's talk about one of the most deceptive and cunning tactics manipulators use. As their last resort, fake reconciliation. This is their final act when everything else has failed. You've stood your ground, set your boundaries, and broken their control. So now, they flip the script. Suddenly, they're kind again, gentle, apologetic. They say things like, "I've been doing a lot of thinking," or "I really miss how things used to be." It feels real. It feels sincere. But underneath that softness hides the same old agenda: control. Here's the raw truth. When all else fails, they act kind again, not because they've changed, but because they want back in, to regain your trust and restart the cycle. Once you let them back in, the old patterns return, slowly at first, and then all at once. This is where Stoic clarity becomes absolutely vital. Epictetus once said, "He who does not observe deceit is not truly wise." And there's another powerful reminder that cuts even deeper. Be careful who you let back in. The snake only sheds its skin to grow larger. Both truths point to one simple lesson. Wisdom isn't just about forgiveness. It's about pattern recognition. A softer tone doesn't always mean a softer heart. A calm voice doesn't always signal true change. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Naomi, finally cut ties with a manipulative ex who had emotionally drained her. For years, for months, she stayed strong, no contact, dedicated to her healing and her growth. Then, one day, he showed up again. He apologized. He claimed he'd been going to therapy, admitted he had been wrong, and said all the right things. Naomi was cautious, but also curious. Slowly, she allowed him back in. And for a while, things seemed better. He was attentive, supportive, and gentle, or so it appeared. Then the small criticisms returned. The subtle guilt trips resurfaced. The passive control crept back in. Naomi realized the painful truth. He hadn't changed at all. He had only adapted the same tactics, just in a new disguise. So, how did you handle someone who offers fake reconciliation? First, take your time. Real change is consistent and proven. Over time, not sudden or dramatic. Second, watch their actions, not their words. Are they truly respecting your boundaries, or simply trying to soften them enough to slip back in? Third, ask yourself honestly, do I truly want this person in my life? Or am I just tempted by the illusion of who they're pretending to be? At the end of the day, Not every apology deserves a reopened door. Protect your peace. Forgive if you feel ready, but never forget the pattern. Because when someone shows you who they are over and over again, the wise move isn't to keep hoping they'll change. It's to finally believe them, and then walk away stronger than ever. If you believe this video can help someone break free from manipulation and reclaim their power, give it a like. It helps more than you know, and allows the YouTube algorithm to share this message further. And don't forget to subscribe to Stoic Capsule for more deep, empowering insights to help you master your mind and your life. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and I'll definitely reply. Stay strong, protect your peace, and keep walking the path of self-mastery. See you in the next video.